The issue I was requested to look at basically is to say, what is the African Continental Free Trade Area? And what is the state of implementation of the agreement establishing the African Continental Free Trade Area? And what happens after the launch of the operational phase of the African Continental Free Trade Area agreement in Niamey in July this year? And like I indicated, I'm going to summarize the issue. So, what is the African Continental Free Trade Area? The most straightforward answer to this question is that the African Continental Free Trade Area is a new established and integrating African market supported by a comprehensive legal framework and offering attractive investment and trade opportunities. Of course, that tends to be rather abstract, so there's need to give some substance to that answer. And I can begin by saying that the vision of the African Continental Free Trade Area is to create a single integrated African market. And when we have done that, basically it means that all the 55 member states of the African Union are state parties to the agreement establishing this institution. And by being state parties, it means two things. They've signed the agreement and they've deposited the instrument of ratification. And then the process of integration goes further. Signing and ratifying are not enough. You need to embark on a process of harmonizing domestic laws, domestic regulations, so that you have a truly seamless arrangement where if one good or service moves from South Africa to Togo, for example, along the way, it is not going to be subjected to new standards of examination to say it cannot pass through our national territory because it does not meet these standards. We are going to have a uniform standards. And why do we need an integrated market? Last night I told you that when you look at Africa, it's a continent of fragmented states. I don't know if some of you tried to look at the map of Africa, from Mauritius to Cape Verde. How many countries are you expected to cross? About 7 of them. And again, if you want to move from Cape Town to Cairo, how many countries are expected to cross? About 12 countries. And if you are moving from the east coast of the United States of America to the west coast, New York to Los Angeles, is still one country. And again, if you are moving from the southern tip of Brazil to the northern tip, Salvador, this is still one country, but the distances are almost similar. So that is the state of Africa. A lot of small countries, and by history, not connected. They are isolated. And they are not competitive in the global arena. And because they are small markets, they cannot attract large-scale investments. And the sake of poverty continues as a result. And that's why we decided to create one integrated market. And when we have done that, we're going to resolve a number of immediate challenges that Africa faces. I indicated that because of small market, we cannot attract investments. And the poverty gets entrenched. And because of the small market, we've made attempts at industrialization, at economic diversification. It has not gone very, very far. And because of small markets, we have not been very, very competitive. So when we create this market, the population immediately becomes aggregated. Right now, the aggregate population of Africa is 1.2 billion people. And in 11 years, 2030, is going to be 1.7 billion people. And in this demography, Africa is the youngest continent in the world. And with this large market now, which is integrated, you remove the excuse that we cannot invest because of a small market. You remove the excuse that we cannot produce in one African country and export to the rest of Africa because of differing rules and regulations. All those are done away under the African Continental Free Trade Area. And as a result of that, new opportunities emerge. And I'll just talk about 5 of them so that you do not go to sleep. And I do not go through a 45-minute page presentation. With a large market and large-scale investments and long-term, of a long-term nature, it means that the prospects for higher rates of economic growth in Africa are going to emerge. And when there are these prospects, then business can also be encouraged to innovate. And because we expect innovation to be part of the African economic landscape, we have decided that the 2020 edition of the Intra-African Trade Fair is going to have a pavilion specifically for the youth who have come up with start-up projects. And we're going to link them to venture capital firms. So these are some of the opportunities that are emerging. And of course, with this impressive picture, and I'm sure some of you are from the financing world, you should be thinking that, is it possible to come up with an African Continental Free Trade Area bond which can be used to finance startups and SMEs? So that's an added opportunity that is coming up. And of course, when you've got a large market, the other opportunity that emerges is that it will now be possible to come up with very viable and long-term projects of economic diversification and transformation. Indicated that Africa has been isolated historically, and that is very, very true. If you look at the rail networks around Africa, they were designed in such a way that they would take produce to the metropole. If the colonies were British colonies, they were designed to take raw materials to London. If the colonies were French colonies, they were designed to take raw materials to France. And there was no connection among them. Now, with the creation of this market, we're going to really encourage the evolution of the development of interconnectivities among the African countries. And already we've got a group of African investors who call themselves the Afro Champions. They came to us and said, we want to work with you. And we entered into a memorandum of understanding. And one of their immediate areas of focus was how to promote linkages in transport and communications among African countries. And they've come up with a financing framework which is going to ensure that within 10 years from 2019, the annual infrastructure gap in financing, the annual gap in financing infrastructure across Africa, which is around about $70 billion US, is going to be overcome within 10 years. So this is the opportunity that has emerged, and the Afro Champions are coming up to take up that. There are also opportunities in the area of education. Africa has a growing population, and Africa has a young population. And in this digital age, education and skills development are very, very paramount. And it will be possible to come up with large-scale establishments which can cater for many African countries. And we are getting inquiries from a number of businesses on how to come up with investments in the area of skills development. And then there's also the opportunity of growing intra-African trade. And this was immediately foreseen by the African Export-Import Bank. But before I go into this, let me tell you a short story. Back home in 2013, I was a board member of the Zambia International Trade Fair Board. And in one of the board meetings, we are really coming up with ways and means of ensuring that we transform it into a business-to-business trade fair. I suggested to the board members that we come up with ways and means of working with the African Union to revive the All Africa Trade Fair. And everybody burst out laughing, because they thought it was a crazy idea, and the African Union is a political organization. When I came to the AU in 2017, I told the team that I had the idea of reviving the All Africa Trade Fair to really give life to trade information in the action plan on boosting intra-African trade. And in no time, one of my young officers linked me to Professor Orama. And we agreed that instead of calling it the All Africa Trade Fair, we call it the Intra-African Trade Fair. And that was born. And the people back home in Zambia said, we are sorry. We didn't know that it could be like this. But we gave it new life. All of you, some of you were in Cairo last year. I think you saw what was there. Everything was above target on exhibitions, above target on business-to-business transaction. And we are going to ensure that under the African Continental Free Trade Area, the Intra-African Trade Fair series will be a crucial part on boosting intra-African trade. And beyond this, there are also very good prospects for the growth of intra-African trade of intra-African trade. Studies by the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa have indicated that if we finalize the process of trade liberalization this year, and we intended to do it by this year, by 2022, intra-African trade is going to grow by 52.3%, which is a large jump. They've also calculated that if we remove non-tariff barriers, which sometimes are a huge impediment to the growth, to trade, that is going to jump by another 52.3%, which will be 100%. So it's possible that by 2022, intra-African trade as a result of trade liberalization and removal of non-tariff barriers should be around 36 or above, 36% and or above. So I've answered what the African Continental Free Trade Area is and the new opportunities that it is offering. May I now look at the current state of implementation of the agreement. This is a legal instrument, and because it's a legal instrument, it gives predictability to business. If they want to move into the market, they are sure that the rules and regulations are not going to change overnight, or they are not going to be changed because they've moved in while others are being favored. They will be very impartial. And it was opened for signature on the 21st March in Kigali last year. And as a legal instrument, it has a number of elements. The first one is the framework agreement, which formally and legally establishes the African Continental Free Trade Area. And when it was opened for signature, 3 protocols were also finalized and part of that framework agreement. The first one is the protocol on trade in goods, and the second is the protocol on trade in services, and the third one is a protocol on rules and procedures on the settlement of disputes. And this is very important for the issue of predictability. If there's a dispute, you use legal means to resolve them. And since there is impartiality, there is also fairness. And these protocols have annexes and appendices. As a legal instrument and as a trade agreement, key to the agreement is the issue of trade liberalization. If we have to create an integrated market, we must remove tariff barriers. And for this reason, in the early stages of negotiation of the agreement, we agreed on a level of ambition of 90% of tariff liberalization of a period of 10 years for what we call the developing countries within the group, and 13 years for the group we call the least developed countries. And it is our expectation that the agreed level of ambition is going to spur manufacturing and in the process increase trade in manufactured goods. And this is already good news because right now, even before the agreement has come into force, 42% of intra-African trade is in manufactured goods. And this is a huge contrast to the fact that almost 90% of Africa's trade to the rest of the world is made up of commodities. But within Africa, 42% of intra-African trade is made up of manufactured goods. I promise to leave some of the material, so I'll move to the next issue, which is the issue of the launch of the operational phase of the African Continental Free Trade Area. Before this was done, we had to go through a process of achieving the minimum number of ratifications. We had to go through a very strong advocacy program to ensure that this is done within a year. But when we left Kigali last year, the legal officers were telling us that you may be disappointed if you think that you can achieve ratification within a year. In the African Union system, it takes about 5 years for a legal instrument to enter into force. And that would have meant that the agreement was opened for signature in 2018, and we should only expect it to enter into force in 2023. But we sat as a team and said, let us make a difference. And we decided to make a difference. So we embarked on a very strong advocacy program. And on 29th April this year, we received the 22nd instrument of ratification. And went to the lawyers to say, instead of 5 years, we have been able to have ratification in a period of 1 year, 1 month, 1 week, and 1 day. Which was very unprecedented in the history of lawmaking in the African Union system. And the agreement specifies that 30 days after receiving the 22nd instrument of ratification, the agreement enters into force. And the agreement entered into force on the 30th May 2019. And so far, we have 27 ratifications. 27 countries have deposited instruments of ratification. And we have got 54 countries that have signed the agreement. The only country that has not signed the agreement is Eritrea. And they felt the pressure in Niamey and rose to announce to the rest of Africa that give us a little time. Very soon, we are also going to sign. So very soon, all the 55 African Union member states are going to be signatories. Now, when we include Eritrea, we are remaining with the 28 countries that are yet to sign. And we are in discussions with a lot of those countries. And some of them, like Nigeria and Morocco, have said very, very, very soon we are going to depose instruments of ratification. So we are confident that when trading starts on the 1st of July 2020, the remaining 28 countries will be ratifying. And therefore, we shall realize the vision of creating one African market, in the sense that all the 55 African Union member states will be state parties to the agreement establishing the African Continental Free Trade Area. The state of play or the state of implementation can also be looked at the administrative side. I didn't hear that. Yes. So at the administrative side, we are the interim secretariat of the African Continental Free Trade Area, and we have a number of tasks. One of the tasks is to establish the permanent secretariat itself, which is going to be located in Ghana. Ghana won the bid to host the permanent secretariat. Thank you very much. And in facilitating that, by the end of this year, which is December, the African Union Commission and the government of Ghana must conclude a hosting agreement. And early next week, a team will be going to Ghana to start the discussions. And then we are also developing the organizational structure for the new secretariat. And member states are saying, please don't make it too large. We have said it will be informed by the agreement and the protocols. But they say, we know that, but don't make it too large. So we are working on organizational structure, and it was our expectation that that organizational structure will be approved by December this year. And related to that, we are also working on the budget and the work program for the new secretariat. So there's also state of play with respect to the issue of market access. Here, all I can state that member states are required to finalize their tariff offers covering 90% of tariff lines by end of September 2019, and tariff offers covering the remaining 10% of tariff lines by the end of November 2019. And then they are also required to make final schedules of tariff concessions and submit them to the January summit in 2020. So member states are very busy in this connection. Then there is also the state of play with respect to trade in services. Globally, trade in services is really becoming a very important component of international trade, and Africa is also capturing that. Here, member states are required to undertake 3 key activities. First, they must finalize their schedules of specific commitments in 5 priority areas, and these are business services, communication services, financial services, transport services, and tourism services. And these are to be submitted to the January 2020 summit. And in addition to this, and this is very key to creating an integrated market, member states are also required to finalize work on regulatory cooperation frameworks by June 2020, and thereafter conclude the remaining work in the services sector by December 2020. Of course, the agreement cannot work in isolation and can not only be left to the governments to operate. We need to engage a lot of stakeholders. These are the private sector, the civil society, and international cooperating partners. And with respect to international cooperating partners, almost on a daily basis, I get a request to go and address some business people in other countries about the African Continental Free Trade Area. Well, I get requests that I brief a visiting dignitary about the African Continental Free Trade Area. So there's a lot of interest globally about the African Continental Free Trade Area. With respect to the private sector, we have a number of frameworks, one of which is the Pan-African Private Sector Investment and Trade Committee, which is eventually going to be the African Business Council. And through here, we are bringing the private sector to participate in the trade policy formulation, negotiation, and implementation. Then we also have the African Business Forum, which inaugurated in 2018. And here we bring business to interact with heads of state and other policymakers to look at ways and means of improving the business environment. And it was through this forum that the Afro Champions Initiative outlined a framework to facilitate financing of infrastructure investments across Africa. And then we're also in the process of developing what is going to be called a web-based and mobile-based African Continental Free Trade Area business application. Basically, through a smartphone, you'll be able to have access to all the information that you need regarding the African Continental Free Trade Area. And through that, you'll also be able to ensure that you receive trade alerts on the movement of your goods if they are moving from one African country to the next African country, and you resolve that in real time. And of course, this is an inclusive process. We are working with the regional economic community to ensure that the small-scale cross-border traders are fully facilitated. They are not going to be left out of the picture. And through the Pan-African Payments and Settlement System, we have been assured by the African Export-Import Bank that we will be able to capture informal cross-border trade. And this is a huge figure. According to the African Export-Import Bank, annually, there's close to $60 billion to $90 billion worth of cross-border trade, which is not accounted for. And the annual figure of Africa's intra-African trade is $170 billion US. So you can say almost more than half of that is unaccounted for. Now, if you bring it into the picture, you can see that the level of intra-African trade could be as high as 40% right now. So this is a long-hanging fruit, and we hope that we'll be able to capture those trade statistics as soon as the Pan-African Payments and Settlement Platform starts working. We're also engaging with the civil society. And we had a very, very successful civil society forum in Niamey, where they were briefed on where we are in the African Continental Free Trade Area, and they were able to make suggestions, and they requested that it should be institutionalized. And we agreed that we are going to have it as an annual event. I promise to be very brief, and I think I'm doing very well. Yes. And I cannot see anybody dozing. There's nobody dozing. Yes. So at this stage, let me look at what lies beyond the launch of the operational phase of the African Continental Free Trade Area. The launch was done on 7th July in Niamey this year. And actually, we are honored to ensure that the African diaspora from the United States of America and the Caribbean came with a full force of 17 people to witness the launch, which was very, very historic. And it brought out a number of issues that we are going that would require us to look at. And the first issue is that we need to continue sensitization so that by 1st July 2020, the remaining 28 countries that have not signed or ratified do so that we have all the 55 African Union countries becoming state parties. Then there's also work for the member states. We have called on all of them to continue the program of sensitizing business so that they are aware of the opportunities offered by the African Continental Free Trade Area. And when they are aware, then business should be in a position where they start planning investments to scale the market. Some may need to go into joint ventures. Some may have the capacity already, but they'll need to come up with the logistics facilities across the various segments of this market. And we hope that the member states will really enhance the process of sensitization. And of course, it's very important that business scales up manufacturing so that they are able to really operate the market. And on our part, we are also going to ensure that we facilitate the implementation of the SME strategy in the African Union with the small and medium enterprise strategy. And we are going to ensure that we continue promoting the development of startups. And we are going to continue promoting the development of the Pan-African fashion industry. And we're also going to continue promoting the development of the pharmaceutical industry. And of course, we're also going to promote the continued development of the automotive value chain project. And yesterday, I met one of the promoters here, which is very, very good. We established linkages, and we're going to work very closely together. And we're also encouraging business associations across Africa to ensure that they come up with a network of continental level institutions. Already, the mining sector have come up with what they call African Association of Chambers of Mines and Associated Industries. And they approached us to say, can we have a memorandum of understanding so that we work together? And they are working on that memorandum of understanding, and we look forward to signing it early next year during the Indaba, mining Indaba, which is going to be held in Cape Town, and it's usually held in Cape Town. And we have also encouraged manufacturers across Africa to come up with a Pan-African or Manufacturers Association of Africa, so that we also enter into a memorandum of understanding so that they can be participating in our meetings with the ministers, and they come up with the proposals that are needed to ensure that we promote the development of manufacturing across Africa. We're also working very closely with the regional economic communities. Under the African Union structures, they are what we call the building blocks to the African economic community. The African economic community is supposed to be established by 2028 under the Abuja Treaty, which was signed in 1991. And the African Continental Free Trade Area is a component part of that. And when it was signed, the regional economic communities were designated as building blocks. And with this institution now coming into force, there are a number of areas where we need to collaborate with them. One of which is trade facilitation, also ensuring that we've got a harmonized system of facilitating informal cross-border trade, as well as issues of development of infrastructure across Africa, and the issue of trade, the detection of trade deflection. Trade deflection comes if and when members in the free trade area have different levels of tariffs with third parties. For example, if a third-party country X has a zero tariffs with a member of the African Continental Free Trade Area, with which you call country Y. Country Y can be tempted to get those goods from country X, bring them in the territory, relabel them as made in the country Y, and export them to the rest of the market. And this is a real danger that we're going to face. And that is what they call in the technical term trade deflection. So to this end, before the end of this year, we are going to come up with a collaborative framework between ourselves and the regional economic communities to see how we can work in the promotion of intra-African trade. I think I've said quite a lot. Let's go towards discussion, but let me conclude by saying that in our numerous engagements with the large U.S. businesses, they've always come to us with the two concerns. Their first concern is that the African markets are very, very small. They want to invest in Togo, the market is very small. We want to invest in Zambia, the market is very small. want to invest in Ethiopia, the market is very small. Then they've also complained that it's very, very difficult to move goods across Africa. If I invest in Togo and I want to move goods to Ghana, I'm going to face some rules and regulations which make it difficult. I want to move to the next country, I'm going to face the same problem. So early on, I said that problem has been resolved. It has been resolved by the creation of the African Continental Free Trade Area. It has been resolved by ensuring that there's going to be a framework for regulatory collaboration or cooperation among the member states so that we don't have conflicting rules and regulations. And it's going to be finally resolved by ensuring that we create an internal market where all the domestic rules and regulations are going to be harmonized so that we truly have an integrated African market. So this is the market which has been formed. It's yearning for your participation. Mobilize investments, and we shall going to give you a red carpet. Thank you for your attention.